Chapter 291. A legend who had transformed into a primordial spirit was already at the top of the overseas world. In the era where there were no land immortals, they could dominate the overseas world. For example, Kanzu from 1,000 years ago had suppressed the overseas world for 200 years. How powerful was that? How domineering was that? But in the face of such pinnacle experts, Su Qin was able to fight against 3 of them alone. Moreover, he was able to severely injure the 3 pinnacle legends who had transformed their primordial spirits. Especially the patriarch of the Snow God Palace, whose physical body was shattered and only his primordial spirit managed to escape. This was because the patriarch of the Snow God Palace had underestimated his opponent and did not have time to activate his life-saving means, but it also showed how terrifying Su Qin's punch was. What a pity! Su Qin slowly retracted his right hand and sighed. The punch he had thrown just now had gathered the power of qi and blood, the power of the primordial spirit, and many of his divine arts. It could be said that he had used all his strength except for the dozens of trump cards, but he still could not completely kill the 3 patriarchs. In any case, the 3 patriarchs were legends who had transformed into a primordial spirit and had rich combat experience. When Su Qin threw out that punch, they had already sensed that something was wrong. Only the patriarch of the Snow God Palace did not have time to use his life-saving means and suffered a great loss. However, the Xianxia patriarch Yuan and Raytheon Lei Xing all escaped unscathed. If my physical body completes the 7th metamorphosis and becomes a Daoist body, the power of this punch will increase by at least 10 times. By then, not to mention 3 immortal soul stage elders, even 6 or 10 of them will be reduced to ashes and not a single trace of them will be left. Su Qin thought to himself. Although his physical body was already half a step into the Dharma body realm, it was not a real Dharma body after all. It was easy to deal with a legend like Kanzu who was only left with his primordial spirit, but he could not crush the 3 patriarchs who had both physical bodies and primordial spirits. If the 3 patriarchs knew what Su Qin was thinking at the moment, they would be so angry that they would vomit blood. Su Qin was not satisfied with fighting against 3 patriarchs alone and severely injuring them. He wanted to completely kill them with one punch? Such powerful qi and blood? You've become an earth immortal? Patriarch Raytheon's pupils constricted as he spoke in disbelief. From Su Qin's punch, he could feel the power of qi and blood as vast as the ocean. In the face of such a power of qi and blood, even an expert like him would be shocked. Impossible. If you were an earth immortal, we would have been reduced to ashes under the coverage of your domain. Would you still need to swing your fist? Patriarch Lei Xing quickly calmed down and stared at Su Qin. If an earth immortal wanted to kill them, he wouldn't even need to lift a finger. The Xianxia patriarch Yuan also came to his senses. He took a step forward and approached Patriarch Lei Xing. He looked at Su Qin with incomparable fear. The power of nightmares belonged to the evil category and was naturally countered by the power of blood. If it was the qi and blood of an elite of the same level, with the power of the Abyss Ancestor's nightmare, he would not be afraid. At most, it would just be a little troublesome. However, Su Qin's qi and blood power had obviously exceeded the level of an elite of the same level. It had reached another level. Sorry to trouble you. Looks like we have to go all out. Patriarch Lei Xing said in a deep voice. Although he could see that Su Qin had not stepped into the realm of an earth immortal and only his physical body had barely touched that level, it was still extremely terrifying. If he did not go all out, not to mention fighting with Su Qin, even escaping would be a problem. From the beginning to the end, whether it was Patriarch Lei Xing, the Xianxia patriarch Yuan, or the patriarch of the Snow God Palace who only had his primordial spirit left, none of them had thought of escaping. When experts fought, in addition to their own strength, what was more important was the battle of momentum and beliefs. Once they had the intention to retreat, what awaited them was only the path of being chased by Su Qin. Of course. Most importantly, Patriarch Lei Xing and the Xianxia patriarch Yuan realized that although Su Qin's strength was terrifying, he was still on the same level as them. The gap between the two sides was not insurmountable. Otherwise, if Su Qin showed the power of an earth immortal, Patriarch Lei Xing and the other two would definitely turn around and leave. You destroyed my physical body. I want you to die. The Patriarch of the Snow God Palace stared straight at Su Qin and said coldly. Although the primordial spirit could break free from the shackles of the physical body and exist independently, and even possess a body to be reborn, a primordial spirit expert with a physical body and a primordial spirit expert without a physical body were two completely different concepts. Even if he possessed a body to be reborn, how could someone else's physical body be suitable for his own, which had been tempered thousands of times? Su Qin glanced at the Patriarch of the Snow God Palace and sneered, "How dare you speak in front of me?" The next moment, Su Qin took a step forward, raised his right hand, and pressed it toward the Patriarch of the Snow God Palace. Rumble! A gigantic hand that covered the sky quickly condensed and slowly descended like the vault of heaven. "Stop him!" The Patriarch of the Xianxia shouted and turned into the body of a succubus again. The endless power of the succubus turned into an abyss and swallowed the huge hand that Su Qin pressed down. It wasn't that the Patriarch of the Snow God Palace was worried about the Patriarch of the Snow God Palace, but if the Patriarch of the Snow God Palace died in the hands of Su Qin, the pressure on them would definitely increase greatly. Even if the Patriarch of the Snow God Palace was only left with his primordial spirit, he was still a primordial spirit expert and could restrain some of Su Qin's attention for them. If the Patriarch of the Snow God Palace died, Su Qin would use all his energy to deal with the two of them, which was obviously not what the Patriarch of the Snow God Palace wanted to see. Patriarch Lei Xing of the Raytheon obviously thought of this as well. His expression became serious and he attacked without hesitation. Rumble! The terrifying power of thunder began to vibrate. The sky was instantly covered by dark clouds and light blue thunder flashed continuously. Thousand Thunder Technique. After Patriarch Lei Xing said these three words, his aura began to weaken rapidly. At the same time, the dark clouds in the sky became denser and denser. Rolling thunder flashed continuously as if it could pierce the sky. In a trance, heaven and earth seemed to be angry and wanted to send down thunder to punish Su Qin. This is the Thousand Thunder technique that Raytheon has used to deter overseas for tens of thousands of years. It can control the real thunder and punish on behalf of heaven. Dozens of miles away, many legends who were watching the battle from afar were amazed. Even the elder Fei Yu, who had always had great confidence in Su Qin, turned pale at this moment. No matter how strong Su Qin was, how could he fight against the real heaven and earth? Not to mention Su Qin, even an earth immortal was like dust in front of the real heaven and earth. An earth immortal was only 1,000 years old, Shoyuan, but heaven and earth had existed for more than tens of thousands of years. Rumble! With the sound of thunder, the dark abyss formed by the Patriarch of the Abyss's power of nightmares covered the sky. And at this moment, the power of thunder controlled by Patriarch Lei Xing didn't care and struck toward Su Qin's body without hesitation. In Patriarch Lei Xing's view, Su Qin had two choices. One was to withdraw the giant hand and resist the thunder with all his strength. The second was to bear the power of the thunder and deal with the Patriarch of the Snow God Palace. No matter which of these two choices was within Patriarch Lei Xing's expectations. If Su Qin chose the former, the danger of the Snow God Palace's Patriarch would naturally be solved. But if he chose the latter, even an Earth Immortal's Dharma body would be injured after rashly bearing the power of the thunder. Su Qin's body was strong, but it was obvious that he had just touched the Dharma body level. He would at least be seriously injured after bearing the power of the thunder. Using the life of the Snow God Palace's Patriarch in exchange for the chance to seriously injure Su Qin was completely profitable. At this moment, the dark power of the Patriarch of the Abyss swept in all directions and came into contact with the giant hand pressed down by Su Qin. The two sides kept colliding. The giant hand was like the palm of an ancient god, eternal and indestructible. It easily broke through the terrifying power of the abyss. No! The Patriarch of the Snow God Palace let out a shrill scream. Under the suppression of the giant hand, his primordial spirit collapsed layer by layer and was completely annihilated. Ha ha! You're finished. No matter how strong your body is, you're finished. Patriarch Lei Xing was not shocked. Instead, he was happy. Su Qin insisted on killing the Patriarch of the Snow God Palace, which was equivalent to bearing the mighty power of the thunder alone. It was exactly what he wanted. Under everyone's gaze, the terrifying thunder that descended from the dark clouds in the sky completely enveloped Su Qin. With Su Qin as the center, the area within a few hundred meters seemed to have turned into a sea of thunder. The thunder surged and emitted a terrifying aura. Even Patriarch Lei Xing did not dare to get close to the sea of thunder that had just formed and was only a few hundred meters in size. The so-called Sea of Thunder was formed by the power of endless thunder and had the power to destroy the world. Even Raytheon, who was known as the Thunder Master, did not dare to bear a sea of thunder with his body. The Sea of Thunder will last for half an hour. By then, the Sea of Thunder will dissipate and the legend of the Empire of Tang will definitely be seriously injured. Let's join forces and kill him directly, once and for all. Patriarch Lei Xing of Raytheon looked at the Patriarch of the Abyss and said word by word. I see. I'll use a forbidden art later. The Patriarch of the Abyss was silent for a moment and nodded. The strength that Su Qin had shown had completely exceeded his expectations, but since they had already surrounded and killed Su Qin, there was no turning back. They could only kill him completely. Otherwise, if they let Su Qin go out alive, there would definitely be endless trouble in the future. Can this Sea of Thunder really injure him? The Patriarch of the Abyss hesitated for a moment and asked in a low voice. Don't worry. Patriarch Lei Xing sneered. The Thousand Thunder art is the secret art of Raytheon. Once hit, almost no one below the Earth Immortal can survive. If it weren't for the legend of the Empire of Tang showing a body that is close to the Dharma body, I'm afraid that this Sea of Thunder alone can completely annihilate him. Patriarch Lei Xing's tone was full of strong confidence. Suddenly, at this moment, the Sea of Thunder in front of him was constantly twisting and a human figure vaguely appeared on the surface of the Sea of Thunder. This is... Patriarch Lei Xing's words came to an abrupt end. However, before Patriarch Lei Xing could react, a right foot slowly stepped out of the Sea of Thunder, followed by the torso, hands, face, and finally the left foot. The next moment, under everyone's incredulous gazes, the figure that walked out of the Sea of Lightning at a steady pace suddenly disappeared. Then, a slender and powerful hand grabbed Ancestor Lei Xing's neck and lifted him up. It tastes good. Su Qin looked at Patriarch Lei Xing, who had a face full of shock, and a smile appeared on his face. P.S. I've started anew. Because of personal reasons, the updates have been unstable and delayed. Now that there's no personal reason, I'll definitely be able to stabilize the updates and even release more explosive updates. Finally, I'm looking for monthly votes. PS is not charged. Chapter 292. It tastes good. Su Qin narrowed his eyes as if he was enjoying something. The Thousand Thunder art that Patriarch Lei Xing used summoned thousands of thunderbolts, forming a 100-meter sea of thunder. It was terrifying, and even Earth Immortals were unwilling to resist it. After all, this was no longer Patriarch Lei Xing's own power, but the vast heavenly might. But for Su Qin, it was just nourishment for cultivating the 5 Thunder God Fist. The 5 Thunder God Fist was obtained by Su Qin when he signed in at the palace. It was a Thunder Path divine art. It could allow Su Qin to truly bathe in the heavenly thunder, so how could he care about a mere 100-meter sea of thunder? The power of heavenly thunder that ordinary Earth Immortals were afraid of was just a breeze in Su Qin's eyes. How is this possible? Patriarch Lei Xing was grabbed by Su Qin by the neck, but he still felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. He couldn't understand why the 100-meter sea of thunder, which was enough to kill all peak mythical level experts, couldn't do anything to Su Qin. Heavenly thunder is useless against me. Su Qin shook his head slightly. Unless it was the real 9 heavens divine thunder, it couldn't hurt him at all. The 5 Thunder God Fist not only allowed Su Qin to master a powerful attack method, but it also gave him a certain degree of immunity to thunder. Of course, the immunity here was only relative. Even heavenly thunder was divided into different levels. If it was the legendary Nine Heavens divine thunder that could destroy everything, Su Qin might not be able to resist it even if he had the 5 Thunder God Fist. However, how rare was the Nine Heavens divine thunder? Only Earth immortals of the thunder lineage could borrow a trace of it. Lei Xing. Not far away, the Kuragenkyo ancestor Yuan had an ugly expression. Just now, Patriarch Lei Xing had vowed to wait for the Sea of Thunder to dissipate before joining hands to kill Su Qin. In the end, such a drastic change happened in less than a moment. Not only was Su Qin not injured in the Sea of Thunder, but he also walked out of the Sea of Thunder unscathed and suppressed Patriarch Lei Xing in an instant. It was simply shocking. Compared with the dignified ancestor Yuan, many legends who were watching the battle dozens of miles away were completely shocked. In their eyes, ancestor Lei Xing was already like an immortal god that commanded lightning and carried out punishment on behalf of the heavens. How awe-inspiring was that? But at this moment, such a great deity was being held in Su Qin's hand like a chicken, unable to move at all. This strong contrast almost gave birth to inner demons in the hearts of many myths. Ancestor. Several of Raytheon's disciples saw their old ancestor being humiliated in such a way, and all of their faces were filled with sorrow, but none of them dared to step forward to stop him. On the battlefield where 4 pinnacle primordial soul-level pinnacle myths fought, just the aura that was spontaneously formed was enough to make it difficult for ordinary pinnacle myths to move, let alone them. I underestimated you. At this moment, Patriarch Lei Xing, who was grabbed by the neck by Su Qin, suddenly calmed down. Although Su Qin's right hand was only on his neck, the terrifying suppressive power it brought about caused Grandmaster Lei Xing's true essence to almost stop. This was also the reason why Grandmaster Lei Xing could not break free. He was the ancestor of a sect, but he was actually lifted up by someone. This was tantamount to a great humiliation. However, Grandmaster Lei Xing had no choice. At this moment, his true essence and divine sense were suppressed, and it was extremely difficult for him to even move, let alone resist. In that case, let's die together. Grandmaster Lei Xing knew that he would not be able to escape. With the strength that Su Qin had displayed, even if he was not as good as a real Earth immortal, he was probably not far from it. In addition, his body had already begun to transform into a true Dharma body. If this dragged on, he might not even have the chance to perish together with him. The next moment, Grandmaster Lei Xing began to burn his life force without hesitation. Shouyuan, in an instant, the power that burst out was simply beyond everything. In an instant he broke free from Su Qin's suppression. Thousand Thunder! Detract! Grandmaster Lei Xing's body began to collapse, and the terrifying power of thunder immediately began to gather crazily. The sky was dark and gloomy. If the Thousand Thunder art was Raytheon's secret art, then the Thousand Thunder attraction was a killing move that would perish together with him. Using the body as a guide to trigger the power of the heavenly thunder, it was more than 10 times stronger than the Thousand Thunder art. Rumble! Endless power of thunder surged. In a flash, it enveloped Su Qin. In an instant, it formed a 1,000-meter sea of thunder. It kept bobbing up and down, emitting an aura that could destroy all things. This 1,000-meter sea of thunder was just floating in the air, but it had already begun to suppress all living beings. Its terrifying heavenly might was vast and magnificent, looking down on all living beings. Before the 1,000-meter sea of thunder was formed, Grandmaster Lei Xing's primordial spirit suddenly jumped out and heaved a sigh of relief. After using the Thousand Thunder attraction, his body would definitely be torn apart by the vast power of thunder immediately, but his primordial spirit would have a chance to escape. Grandmaster Lei Xing's primordial spirit had abandoned his body before the 1,000-meter sea of thunder descended, and he was lucky enough to survive. After losing my body, even if I possess a new body, I'll need decades to get used to it, Grandmaster Lei Xing sighed softly in his heart, but in the blink of an eye, he became excited. Compared to being completely suppressed by Su Qin, this was already an excellent outcome. At least his primordial spirit was still alive. And for a peak legend at the primordial spirit level, the primordial spirit was more important. I've long heard that Raytheon's Thousand Thunder attraction is a shocking killing move. Now, It seems that it really lives up to its reputation. In the distance, the Xianxia ancestor Yuan looked at the 1,000-meter sea of thunder that was slowly bobbing up and down. There was still a hint of shock on his face. Grandmaster Lei Xing shook his head and sighed. If it weren't for the fact that I had no choice, why would I use this killing move? 1,000 Thunder Attraction was a killing move that sacrificed one's body. If it wasn't for the fact that there was no way out, no one would be willing to do so. After all, this was equivalent to sacrificing 800 to kill 1,000 enemies. So what if he killed the enemy? Wouldn't his body still be shattered under the mighty thunder? That's right. The ancestor Yuan also deeply agreed. Su Qin was too strong. Not only had his body begun to transform into a true Dharma body, but his blood and qi were soaring. The attack methods he had mastered were even more incredible. Just a casual palm strike was enough to shatter the primordial spirit of the Grandmaster of the Snow God Palace. This ability was simply shocking. This is Raytheon's 1,000th Thunder Attraction. Dozens of miles away, many legends saw the rapidly forming 1,000-meter sea of thunder. They swallowed hard and said in a trembling voice, "Is 1,000th Thunder Attraction very strong?" A legend with less experience asked cautiously. "It's more than strong." Another legend sneered. 2,000 years ago, an Earth immortal fought Raytheon. As a result, 10 awakened Grandmasters of Raytheon joined forces to use 1,000th Thunder Attraction, which triggered a 10,000-meter sea of thunder and forced the Earth immortal to retreat. Even the Earth immortal was forced to retreat. Do you think 1,000th Thunder Attraction is strong? As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. In everyone's eyes, an Earth immortal was already an invincible existence. To be able to force an Earth immortal to retreat was enough to show the world-shaking power of 1,000th Thunder Attraction. "My lord is in danger." The old man Fei Yu's face was solemn. He had also heard that Raytheon used 1,000th Thunder Attraction to force an Earth immortal to retreat. Of course, it was Raytheon's 10 Grandmasters who joined forces and triggered a 10,000-meter sea of thunder. It was far more than Grandmaster Lei Xing alone who only triggered a 1,000-meter sea of thunder. But Su Qin was not a real Earth immortal. Under this kind of killing move, it was really hard to say whether Su Qin could block it. Even if Su Qin barely survived the 1,000-meter sea of thunder, he still had to face the Xianxia ancestor Yuan who was eyeing him covetously. Buzz! As the 1,000-meter sea of thunder continued to shake and undulate, the aura of destruction quickly spread out. He should be dead, right? Grandmaster Lei Xing and the Xianxia ancestor Yuan stared at the 1,000-meter sea of thunder. Although the two of them were very confident in 1,000th Thunder Attraction, the strength that Su Qin displayed just now was too terrifying. Whether it was Grandmaster Lei Xing or the Xianxia ancestor Yuan, they still had a trace of worry in their hearts. This was already a killing move of mutual destruction, and Grandmaster Lei Xing had even sacrificed his body for this. If they still couldn't deal with Su Qin, they really had no other way. At this moment, the 1,000-meter sea of thunder began to surge and distort. A slender and tall figure still walked out of the sea of thunder unhurriedly. It was Su Qin. At this moment, Su Qin was untainted, as if the terrifying 1,000-meter sea of thunder did not affect him at all. How is this possible? Grandmaster Lei Xing and the Xianxia ancestor Yuan's expressions changed when they saw this scene. They had already predicted any outcome that Su Qin would walk out of the killing move of 1,000 lightning summoning alive. But even so, he would still be seriously injured. How could he be strolling leisurely like he was now? I told you. Heavenly thunder is useless against me. Su Qin shook his head again. Under everyone's shocked gaze, Su Qin opened his mouth slightly and took a deep breath. In an instant, the 1,000-meter sea of thunder behind Su Qin began to shake and distort, and finally turned into terrifying lightning power that surged into Su Qin's mouth. The 1,000-meter sea of thunder that Grandmaster Lei Xing had summoned at the cost of his body was actually devoured by Su Qin without leaving a single drop behind. Just a little more. After Su Qin swallowed the 1,000-meter sea of thunder, he felt it carefully for a while and then a look of regret appeared on his face. If there were 10 or 20 more thousand meters sea of thunder like this, he could use them to cultivate the 5 Thunder Divine Fist and use the power of the 5 Thunder Divine Fist to refine his body. He might be able to complete the 7th transformation of his body and become a real Dharma body. Monster. You are a monster. After Grandmaster Lei Xing saw that the 1,000-meter sea of thunder was completely swallowed by Su Qin, a huge wave of emotions surged in his heart. The power of lightning symbolized destruction. Even a great sect like the Thunder God sect, which specialized in using lightning as its foundation, would not touch the heavenly lightning directly with their physical bodies, let alone swallow all the power of the heavenly lightning. Although a martial artist's body was strong, their internal organs were still very fragile. How could they withstand the power of heavenly thunder? But Su Qin had easily swallowed the 1,000-meter sea of thunder. This behavior only showed one thing. Su Qin's body had completely exceeded their imagination. Even his already fragile internal organs had been tempered like Vajra and could ignore the power of heavenly thunder. Thinking of this, Grandmaster Lei Xing and the Kura-Genkyo Patriarch Yuan suddenly felt despair. With Su Qin's body that could devour thunder, even if he stood there and let them hit him, they wouldn't be able to hurt him. However, as long as they were casually touched by Su Qin, they would be severely injured. The two were completely unequal. Su Qin was in an invincible position. As long as they made a mistake, they would be doomed eternally. Run! Ancestor Lei Xing and the Abyss ancestor of the Black Source sect looked at each other, then suddenly turned into two phantoms and fled in two different directions. Grandmaster Lei Xing was only left with his primordial spirit now. Without the restraint of a physical body, his speed was extremely fast. In almost an instant he appeared dozens of miles away. The Kura-Genkyo Patriarch Yuan transformed into the incubus body, which was also shapeless and formless. He was almost no slower than Grandmaster Lei Xing. Want to leave? Do you think you can? Su Qin sneered. He stretched out his right hand and clenched it into the depths of the void. A strange long blade that was shaped like a sickle and curved like a full moon was pulled out by him. It was the demon god's blade. This peerless demon blade, which was obtained from the cave world and suspected to be related to the demon gods in the depths of the cave world, suddenly bloomed with an abyss-like light. The world suddenly turned pitch black, leaving only a pitch-black blade light that looked like a crack in the sky. The blade light of the demon god's blade was extremely fast. Coupled with Su Qin's current strength, it instantly opened up a distance of dozens of miles and appeared behind Grandmaster Lei Xing. Grandmaster Lei Xing seemed to have noticed something and immediately urged the power of his primordial spirit to form dozens of layers of barriers behind him. However, under the sharpness of the demon god's blade, the barrier condensed from the power of the primordial spirit was like a thin piece of paper that shattered upon contact. In the end, under the horrified gaze of Patriarch Lei Xing, the primordial spirit was forcefully cut into two. The primordial spirit was originally formless. After being cut in two, the power of Grandmaster Lei Xing's primordial spirit was still struggling, trying to restore to its original state. Unfortunately, in addition to the extreme sharpness of the demon god's blade, it also carried an aura from the abyss of hell, which was enough to corrode everything. It was the nemesis of illusory things like the primordial spirit. Rip, rip, rip. In the midst of Grandmaster Lei Xing's wailing, his primordial spirit gradually collapsed and turned into nothingness. Grandmaster Lei Xing is dead? Seeing this scene, many legends were dumbfounded and couldn't believe it. Grandmaster Lei Xing, who had dominated the sea for an era, had fallen so easily? At this moment, taking advantage of the time when Su Qin slashed out with the blade, the Kura-Genkyo Grandmaster had already fled hundreds of miles away. Although the demon god's blade was extremely sharp, it was impossible to truly ignore distance. Within hundreds of miles, the blade light of the demon god's blade could maintain its greatest power, but once it exceeded hundreds of miles, its power would rapidly decline. Safe. After the Kura-Genkyo Grandmaster sensed that Grandmaster Lei Xing had completely fallen, he was terrified, but at this moment, he also heaved a sigh of relief. At this time, he had already fled hundreds of miles away. At such a long distance, even if Su Qin slashed out with the blade again, he might not be able to catch up with him, let alone kill him. However, the next moment, Su Qin's gaze turned, and he kept the demon god's blade back into the system space, and turned to look in the direction of the Kuragenkyo Grandmaster. Immediately afterward, Su Qin took a step forward, stretched out his right hand, and clenched it slightly toward the void. Buzz! Layers of divine light converged. In an instant, a bow-shaped void formed entirely of divine light appeared in Su Qin's hand. The next moment, Su Qin held the bow in his right hand and put his left hand on the string. Bang! The bow was drawn to a full moon. Boom! The world's essence chi within a radius of several miles and dozens of miles suddenly became violent, forming a monstrous wave of world's essence chi that continued to surge towards Su Qin. To be precise, it was converging toward the 9 Yao Bao in Su Qin's hand. This scene was extremely shocking. A terrifying aura spread in all directions in an instant. All the mythical level martial artists felt a great sense of oppression descending. That is, hundreds of miles away, the Kuragenkyo Grandmaster, who was secretly rejoicing, turned pale. At this moment, he could almost feel a terrifying murderous intent that had locked onto him. What the hell happened? The Kuragenkyo Grandmaster looked shocked, and his whole body trembled. Not only the Kuragenkyo Grandmaster, but all the mythical level martial artists around felt a shocking murderous intent condensing. The Kuragenkyo Grandmaster's scalp exploded. He subconsciously turned his head and looked at Su Qin. With just one glance, he saw a scene that he would never forget for the rest of his life. He saw that Su Qin held a bow made entirely of divine light in his right hand, and his left hand pulled the bowstring that bloomed with bright light. Endless world's essence chi gathered and formed an illusory arrow on the 9 Yao Bao. As soon as the arrow was formed, it quickly condensed from illusory to real. A trace of shocking murderous intent lingered and collided on the arrow, bursting out countless flashes of light more terrifying than thunder and lightning. Subsequently, under the shocked gaze of the Kuragenkyo Grandmaster, Su Qin's left hand released the bowstring. Clang! A terrifying divine light instantly penetrated thousands of miles. Under this shocking divine light, the Kuragenkyo Grandmaster's body and primordial spirit were turned into nothingness. P.S. This chapter has a lot of words. It's equivalent to 2 chapters in one. The author wants to see if he can write another chapter, but it will probably be very late. You can read it tomorrow. P.S. is free. Chapter 293. The heaven and earth essence chi slowly calmed down, and the terrifying aura that was constantly vibrating and spreading gradually disappeared, leaving only the flame mountain range standing there quietly, exuding a scorching aura. Whether it was the many legends watching the battle from dozens of miles away, or the ancestors of the great sects who were secretly observing from hundreds of miles away, they all looked at the sky in a daze. There was a tall and slender figure standing there, holding a large bow composed entirely of divine light in his hand. He was like a celestial being in the myths and legends who could trample the heavens and earth. In fact, Su Qin was indeed no different from an immortal god at this moment. 3 legends at the primordial spirit level joined forces to attack and set up an eternal killing trap to suppress Su Qin, but they were killed instead, which was simply shocking. Especially in the end, the Kuragenkyo ancestor Yuan had already escaped hundreds of miles away, but he was still killed by Su Qin's arrow. Such a powerful means. Not an immortal god. What was it? Although a distance of a few hundred miles was nothing to a mythical martial artist, any pinnacle mythical martial artist could easily reach a distance of a few hundred miles with a casual strike if they wanted to. But any attack that crossed hundreds of miles would have its power weakened to the extreme, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that it would not survive. But Su Qin's arrow, after crossing hundreds of miles, directly killed the ancestor Yuan, and the aftermath penetrated thousands of miles, almost shaking the world. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, they would have thought that some earth immortal had made a move. They're all dead. Many of the legends who were watching the battle were at a loss, not knowing what to do. Before Ancestor Lei Xing and the other 2 ancestors came together, they were almost certain that Su Qin was destined to be suppressed. Even if there were any accidents, Su Qin would be lucky enough to escape, but he would also be seriously injured. How could it be like now, where the side that died was actually 3 ancestors? My lord is too powerful. Even the old man Fei Yu was shocked at this moment. Su Qin fought against 3 ancestors alone, and not only did he not show any signs of weakness, but he also killed the 3 ancestors. The divine power he displayed was simply like stepping into the realm of earth immortals. And at this moment, Su Qin glanced at the 9 Yao Bao in his right hand, and with a thought, the divine Bao turned back into divine light and merged into the depths of the void. The 9 Yao Bao was a magic weapon that Su Qin obtained from the sign in the palace. Unlike magic weapons like the demon god's blade and demon suppressing seal, the 9 Yao Bao was a magic weapon on the spiritual level. As long as Su Qin's primordial spirit was strong enough, the power of the arrow shot could be infinitely increased. After Su Qin reached the 5th heavenly layer, he could already use the 9 Yao Bao to kill the army of kings thousands of miles away. Not to mention that Su Qin is now at the peak of the 9th heavenly layer, and his divine sense has also transformed into a Yuan Shen. Compared to the power of divine sense, the power of the Yuan Shen is much greater, and the improvement of the 9 Yao Bao is also more intense. It was because of this that Su Qin was able to kill the Kuragenkyo ancestor Yuan from hundreds of miles away. In fact, if ancestor Yuan didn't choose to run away and fought with Su Qin head-on, he might be able to hold on for a while. After all, ancestor Yuan was a peak legend at the primordial spirit level. The body of succubus was invisible and intangible, and it was harder to kill than ordinary primordial spirits. But ancestor Yuan ran away. Once he ran away, it was equivalent to taking the initiative to die. With the power of the 9 Yao Bao, unless ancestor Yuan was like Su Qin, his body or primordial spirit was half a step into the earth immortal level, he would die without a doubt. As for the body of succubus, the 9 Yao Bao was a magic weapon on the spiritual level, and it specialized in countering such illusory things. It could easily kill a body of succubus like ancestor Yuan. Just after Su Qin took back the 9 Yao Bao, he scanned with his primordial spirit and seemed to have found something. He looked at the place where ancestor Lei Xing died 100 miles away. After using the 1000th Thunder Guide, ancestor Lei Xing's body had already turned into powder under the 1000-meter Thunder Sea, leaving only his primordial spirit. Then, after being slashed by Su Qin's demon god blade, his primordial spirit collapsed. However, after ancestor Lei Xing's primordial spirit collapsed, a piece of blackwood fell to the ground. This piece of blackwood was scorched black, as if it had been hit by thousands of thunderbolts, but there were faint thunder patterns on the surface, which was extremely extraordinary. If that was all, Su Qin wouldn't care at all. But when Su Qin scanned it with the Eye of Truth, he found that there was an extremely abundant thunder chi inside this piece of blackwood, which wasn't much weaker than the 1000-meter Thunder Sea that ancestor Lei Xing had paid the price of his body. Is this the thunder wood that Lord Donghai mentioned? Su Qin's primordial spirit shrouded it and grabbed the blackwood and put it in front of him. The so-called thunder wood referred to a divine tree that was more than 10,000 years old. When it was about to transform into a human form, a thunder tribulation descended from heaven and earth. In the end, it didn't survive the thunder tribulation, and the tree body was destroyed under the thunder tribulation, but there were still a few branches left. And these branches that had experienced the thunder tribulation were the thunderwood. According to the jade stone left behind by Lord Donghai, the energy contained in a divine tree that had lived for 10,000 years had far exceeded that of an ordinary land immortal. However, it was restricted by its own race and could only be fixed in one place, unable to move freely. Only after experiencing the thunder tribulation could it get rid of the tree body, transform into a human form, and fly into the sky, burrow into the earth, and roam the sea. Any 10,000-year divine tree that had transformed into a human form was already standing at the top of the land immortals. In the last Vitality Tide era, there was a powerhouse whose body was a 10,000-year divine tree. Even Lord Donghai was unwilling to offend him. Unfortunately, in the final battle in the cave world, This divine tree powerhouse fell under the terrifying gaze of the demon god when he opened his eyes. No wonder Lei Xing had to bring this piece of wood out even if he had to abandon his body. It turns out that it's the thunder tribulation wood. Su Qin's eyes lit up as he thought quickly in his heart. Although the thunder tribulation wood was only the product of the failed tribulation of the 10,000-year divine tree, because it resisted the terrifying power of the thunder tribulation, it was already stained with a trace of the ninth heaven divine thunder aura. For a great sect like Raytheon that specialized in thunder, the importance of a piece of thunder tribulation wood was absolutely greater than any magic treasure. If one wore the thunder tribulation wood for a long time, they could slowly absorb the terrifying power of the thunder tribulation inside. It was equivalent to a peerless powerhouse close to a land immortal cleansing your body 24 hours a day. Such an opportunity was simply rare in the world. With this piece of thunder tribulation wood, my 5 thunder god fist can definitely rise to another level. A smile appeared on Su Qin's face, and his essence spirit once again swept across the thunder tribulation wood. Just as Su Qin was about to put away the thunder tribulation wood, his expression changed slightly, and a trace of coldness flashed across his face. Come out. Su Qin's essence spirit power instantly penetrated the thunder tribulation wood, and immediately forced out a trace of essence spirit power. The essence spirit power floated above the thunder tribulation wood and condensed into the appearance of ancestral patriarch Lei Xing. At this moment, ancestral patriarch Lei Xing realized that he had been discovered, so he immediately begged for mercy. Don't kill me. As long as you spare my life, I'm willing to do anything. Ancestral patriarch Lei Xing begged bitterly. No wonder you can survive. It turns out that you hid a trace of essence spirit power in the thunder tribulation wood. Su Qin glanced at ancestral patriarch Lei Xing thoughtfully. The demon god's blade was extremely sharp and contained a trace of aura from the abyss of hell, which could corrode any mental energy. However, ancestral patriarch Lei Xing hid his essence spirit in the thunder tribulation wood and used the 9 heavens divine thunder chi in the thunder tribulation wood to resist the corrosion of the demon god's blade. The aura of the thunder tribulation wood was extremely restrained. Even if the essence spirit power enveloped it, it might not be discovered. If Su Qin hadn't scanned it with the eye of truth out of caution, ancestral patriarch Lei Xing might have really escaped. Although ancestral patriarch Lei Xing only had a trace of essence spirit power at the moment, and even if he survived, it was still troublesome. Noisy! Su Qin glanced at ancestral patriarch Lei Xing, who was full of fear, and directly raised his hand and crushed the remaining trace of essence spirit power. Then he checked the thunder tribulation wood inside and out again. After confirming that there was nothing wrong with it, he put it away. At the same time, the old man Fei Yu also quickly rushed over. Except for the old man Fei Yu, the other legends who were watching the battle also followed behind him with trembling bodies. These legends were all disciples of the major sects, and more than a dozen of them were elders of the Xianxia, Raytheon, and Snow God Palace. They watched their ancestral patriarch die in the hands of Su Qin, and their hearts were filled with grief and indignation. But no matter how sad they were, they could only return to Su Qin and wait for Su Qin's judgment. As for running away, even the Xianxia's ancestral patriarch, who had escaped hundreds of miles away, was killed by Su Qin's arrow, let alone them. My lord! The old man Fei Yu walked to Su Qin and said respectfully. At the moment, Su Qin had returned to the Flame Mountain range and was looking at the source of fire in front of him. Get up! Su Qin glanced at the old man Fei Yu, then looked at the many legends behind Fei Yu, and said with interest, What, you want to avenge your ancestral patriarch? As soon as these words came out, the scalps of the legends suddenly exploded, and the leaders shook their heads repeatedly. Senior's means are heaven-defying. How can we, mere mortals, dare to have the thought of revenge? Yes, it's our ancestral patriarch's honor to die in the hands of Senior. We can't thank you enough. How can we take revenge? Several legends' faces flushed red, and quickly said, Ha! Su Qin's face was full of contempt. If this group of people stubbornly said that they wanted to avenge their ancestral patriarch, he might think highly of them and then crush them all. But at this time, seeing how these people were trembling, Su Qin suddenly felt too lazy to continue. These legends in front of him would find it difficult to enter the peak legend realm in their lifetime, and they couldn't even look up to Su Qin. Get lost. Su Qin was too lazy to continue to look at them, and looked at the source of fire again. Yes, thank you, Senior. Many legends felt as if they were pardoned and left respectfully. After all the legends left, the old man Fei Yu couldn't help but say, "My lord, let them go. Today's matter will be passed back to the major sects." Speaking of this, a trace of worry appeared on Fei Yu's face. If Su Qin destroyed the Wanjian school, it would only shake the overseas, but there would be no future trouble. After all, the Wanjian school was destroyed. As for the other major sects, Su Qin didn't completely offend them, and Su Qin had shown enough strength, so these major sects naturally wouldn't make a move against Su Qin. But now, Su Qin killed the Snow God Palace, Xianxia, and Raytheon in a row, which was equivalent to completely angering these three major sects. Putting aside the Snow God Palace and Xianxia, Raytheon was extremely powerful, and had more than one Earth immortal since the last Vitality Tide era. More importantly, Su Qin destroyed the Wanjian school, and then killed the three major sects' nascent soul-level ancestors without hesitation, which must have completely aroused the fear of the other major sects. If Raytheon's lobbying, it was very likely that all the major sects would join forces to besiege Su Qin again. At that time, Su Qin would not only be facing three nascent soul-level enemies, but also the foundation of all the major sects overseas, and even the Earth Immortals would be involved. Many of the major sects overseas had been passed down for tens of thousands of years, and even in the era of Earth Immortals, they were still dazzling, and the meaning they represented was enough to crush everything. In particular, the great sects that had been passed down from the previous Vitality Tide era, such as the Witchcraft sect, Daoist school, Thunder God sect, and so on, had an unknown amount of heritage in their sections. Perhaps they had some terrifying means left behind from the previous Vitality Tide era. It's okay. I know what I'm doing. Su Qin didn't care, and his expression was still calm. As the Vitality Tide continued to recover, there would be a battle between him and the major sects overseas sooner or later. Unless Su Qin was willing to give up the battlefield and give up everything in the Empire of Tang. But how was that possible? The battlefield was the core of the recovery of the Vitality Tide, and played an unimaginable role in promoting Su Qin's cultivation. Unless it was a last resort, Su Qin would not give up the battlefield. Although Su Qin had the system, sooner or later he would become an Earth Immortal or even stronger. But becoming an Earth Immortal in 500 years and becoming an Earth Immortal in 100 years were two completely different concepts. If Su Qin took 500 years to become an Earth Immortal, his family and friends would have died of old age. At that time, no matter how strong Su Qin was, he would only be alone. As expected of the source of fire, the vastness of the fire element's vitality is simply incredible. No wonder the ancient records say that the source of the five elements can help martial artists communicate with the Vitality Sea. Such a huge amount of fire element's vitality, even if placed there, can form a connection with the Vitality Sea in the depths of the void. Su Qin took a few glances at the source of fire and marveled in his heart. Although Su Qin had devoured a source of earth before, that source of earth had not been completely nurtured. How could it compare to the source of fire that was almost complete? I'm going to go into seclusion for a while, you guard outside. Su Qin glanced at the old man Fei Yu, thought for a moment, and said faintly. With the majestic fire element's vitality contained in the source of fire, it was more than enough to push the picture of the Great Sun to the minor completion realm. And the minor completion picture of the Great Sun, even if it could not allow Su Qin to transform into the strongest divine beast of the fire element, the three-legged golden crow, it could still allow Su Qin to obtain part of the three-legged golden crow's divine ability talent. With these divine ability talents, Su Qin was enough to sweep away all the peak myths. Even if he encountered a real Earth Immortal, he might be able to exchange a few blows. This was also the reason why Su Qin brazenly killed 3 peak myth ancestors of the primordial spirit realm. At this moment, Su Qin was already able to kill primordial spirit realm ancestors at will, not to mention devouring the source of fire in front of him. Yes. The old man Fei Yu bowed respectfully and said. Su Qin slowly walked to the entrance of the source of fire. When he was about to step in, he turned his head again and looked at the outside world. When Su Qin walked out again, he would be truly invincible in the world and look down on the world. P.S. I'm ashamed, I don't dare to say that there is another chapter. I suggest you read it tomorrow morning. This chapter is still a long chapter with a lot of words, equivalent to 2 chapters combined into one. As for whether there is more, the author can only say that I'm working hard. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation, audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.